Hello, my name is Iris Curtis, and I'm the Supervisory Auditor from the Office of Community Services. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's webinar. Next slide, please. The purpose of this webinar is to provide an overview of the Next Steps tool for LIHEAP targeting, developed by the LIHEAP Performance Management Implementation Workgroup. The audience for this webinar includes state grantees and support staff who are responsible for using performance measures data to evaluate and make decisions about their LIHEAP program. Next slide, please. Today's webinar will be 60 minutes long and will include time for questions as well as interactive polls. A copy of the slide deck is available in the handout section of the GoToWebinar sidebar. This webinar is also being recorded and will be available on the ACF YouTube channel. Next slide, please. During the webinar, participants are encouraged to enter any questions they have in the question box. These questions will be addressed at the end of the session. You can find the question entry box on the GoToWebinar client, which should look something like what we depicted in the screenshots on this slide. Next slide. As many of you may know, the LIHEAP Performance Management Implementation Workgroup, or PMIWG, consists of state grantees, OCS staff, and contractors. This group meets regularly to discuss performance management issues and to develop resources and tools for grantees. Within the PMIWG, the Performance Management Integration Team is responsible for creating tools and resources that help state grantees integrate performance management into day-to-day LIHEAP program administration. Members of this team include Jane Blank from the Wisconsin Department of Administration, Andrew Bright from the New York Office of Temporary and Disability Assistance, Lisa Gobin from Oregon Housing and Community Services, Marisa Larson from NCAT, and myself, Iris Curtis, from the Office of Community Services. These team members developed and will present the tool covered in today's webinar. Next slide, please. Here is the agenda for today's webinar. First, Melissa Torgerson will provide some background on the new Next Steps tool and tell us why it's important. Next, Connor Priest will go over how to access the tool and how to navigate once you're there. After that, Lisa Gobin and Jane Blank will give a demonstration of how to use this tool using Oregon as an example. Finally, Marisa Larson will talk about the future of this tool and additional resources available on the Performance Management website before opening the floor to audience questions. And now I'll turn it over to Melissa to start us off.
Thank you, Iris. Hi, my name is Melissa Torgerson, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about this new Next Steps tool and why it's important. But first, we're going to start with an audience poll. So if you could all take a moment to answer the following question. Did you review your FY 2020 LIHEAP performance data when designing your FY 2021 program? And the response options are yes, we always use our data for evaluation and planning. We really wanted to, but we didn't have the time. We really wanted to, but had no idea how. And are you kidding? Who has time for that right now? If you could all take a moment and answer, and Connor, I'll then share the results. How are we doing, Connor?
Good. We've got about 60% of the responses in. So if you want, I can go ahead and close it out.
Yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at what folks
All
said.
right.
So about half of you use your data for evaluation and planning. About 30% of you wanted to but didn't have time. 10% of you said you wanted to but had no idea how, and 13% of you actually chose the last option. Are you kidding? Who has time for that right now? Which segues really nicely into the next slide. Right now, we know that all of you, between the pandemic, additional funding, new programs, and rising fuel prices, you're all facing unprecedented workloads. And you might be asking if it's really the time to be paying attention to performance measures. But performance management is actually even more important in the midst of challenges because it kind of serves as a compass. For example, the LIHEAP statute requires that grantees target higher benefits to higher burden households, and performance measures help to be sure that you are or are not in compliance. Many of you have noted challenges with application rates and outreach. Performance measures tell you a lot about who you're assisting with LIHEAP, and combined with other data, it can also tell you a lot about who you're not assisting and where targeted outreach might be helpful. Some of you are making changes to your program, even in the midst of kind of so many different things happening, and performance measures can tell you whether those changes are having their intended effect or if additional changes or improvements might be needed. And finally, performance data can help you all identify areas where this additional funding you're getting could be used to improve your programs, most specifically when it comes to benefit targeting. Next slide. Over the last few years, the PMI team has created a number of tools to help all of you understand your LIHEAP performance measure data and make using that data easier. So one example here that you see on the screen is the LIHEAP Performance Management Executive Summary. This is a one-page document that highlights key LIHEAP performance data, and it's in an easy to understand format. It's generated annually for each grantee, and it's posted on the performance management website. So if you were to go there and visit today, you could see your past year's executive summaries. And it was mailed recently to grantees from a prize in early October. So most of you should have received it for FY 2020 data. Next slide. While these executive summaries are really useful for understanding your performance measures, the PMI team have noted that simply understanding the data isn't enough, and they're getting questions from their peers, and we're getting questions from grantees at a prize that might sound familiar to you. For example, okay, so I've used my executive summary over the past few years to understand my performance measures data, but where do I go from here? How do I know what steps I should be taking to improve my program's performance? And what are states with higher benefit and burden reduction targeting indices doing differently than me? And that's precisely why the PMI team has worked so hard to produce the Next Steps tool for LIHEAP targeting that we're going to talk about today, because they wanted to help their peers and themselves move beyond simply understanding their data and instead begin using that data to inform steps for program improvement. Next slide. So this Next Steps tool that we're going to cover is being built in two phases. Phase one, which we're unveiling today, is designed to help grantees understand their benefit targeting and burden reduction targeting index values generated from your most recent performance data, and how those values can be used to compare your state LIHEAP performance data over time, to compare your data with national averages, and compare your own performance data with other grantees in your region. Phase two, which Marisa will talk more about later, will help grantees brainstorm ways to modify their programs to improve their performance. Next slide. I want to make a really important note, hence the big yellow star and grayed out screen. You're going to notice as we walk through the tool today that you'll see, as we mentioned, national averages and regional averages and comparisons. But it's really important for all of you to know that when these measures were developed, they were developed with the primary purpose of giving you all the data needed to track changes and improvements within your own programs over time. And so the scores of other grantees across your region or within the nation are not intended to be a benchmark, and they shouldn't be considered good or bad. Rather, they're just intended to provide each of you with some context for your own measures and to help you identify potentially promising targeting practices that you might be able to learn from or replicate within your own state. So now I'm going to turn it over to Connor, who's going to tell us how to access the Next Steps tool and give us an overview of its basic structure.
All right, great. Thanks, Melissa. And just briefly, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Connor Priest, and I'm a policy analyst at Apprise. And I do a lot of work with the various teams of the PMIWG in helping to prepare tools like the one we're looking at here today. So as Melissa said, for my portion of today's presentation, I'm going to show you how to access and use this new tool. And so if we click one slide forward here, you can see that the Next Steps tool is built right into the LIHEAP Performance Management website, and the direct link is listed on the screen, and that's www.liheappm.acf.hhs.gov/data-warehouse/PMI. And I'm actually going to click on that hyperlink and leave the slide deck for now and show the rest of this demonstration live on the website. But please note that we have documented each of the steps that I'm going to be going through here in the slide deck, and those are available, as Iris said, in the GoToWebinar handouts. But I'll go ahead and click the link here. And once you've navigated to that link, you'll be brought here to kind of the access page for the Next Steps tool. And the first thing you'll probably notice here is that you need to be logged into a LIHEAP Performance Management website account in order to access this resource. And if you aren't logged in already, then you'll be presented with this access page, and you'll get this note at the bottom here that tells you that you need to have an account in order to log in or in order to use the resource. But if I had already been logged in when I clicked on that link, then I would have been able to bypass this step and just gone straight to the tool. But I'm going to show you the login process anyway, so this works out. But from this point, there are two ways that you can go about logging in. So first, you can just click this link here that says login, and then you'll be brought to the login page from there. But alternatively, users can log in from any page on the PMW by clicking the Login tab that's up here on the main navigator bar. So I'll just click on that login button. And at this point, you'll need to enter your username and password for the LIHEAP PMW. Right now, I've got mine auto-filling just for the purposes of being quick here, but I don't normally have it like that. But many of you may already have a LIHEAP Performance Management website account, but some of you may not. If you don't already have an account, then you can request one by coming down here and clicking on this Create Account link. And that will bring you to this form, which will ask you to fill in some information. And once you've filled all of that in, you just come down to the bottom and click the Create New Account button. And that will send your request on to the webmaster for approval. And in most cases, legitimate requests are approved within 1 to 2 business days. But if you're having trouble getting or accessing an account or having any trouble with the tool at all, you can actually come back to the Performance Management website homepage and click the Help tab, and then you'll be able to submit a request for help there. And if that doesn't ultimately resolve your issue, then you can also contact someone directly on the Apprise team, and our contact information will be available on one of the last slides here in the presentation. So that covers requesting an account, but like I said, most of you will probably already have an account like me. So you would just want to enter your username and password and hit login. And after you do that, all federal websites now have two-factor authentication. And so you'll be asked to complete that by entering a one-time password provided by either text message or phone call. And you'll receive the one-time password to the phone number that you provide when you're signing up for your account. So just make sure you enter a phone number that you have access to if working from home or anything like that. But the default delivery method for the one-time password will be a phone call, but you can change that to a text message. So what you would have to do is just check this box, and then you'd have to enter the one-time password that is delivered by phone call that first time. But then once you click verify, you'd be able to change your settings and set it to text message. So I already have mine set to text message, so let me just check my phone here. Okay, great. So once you're all logged in, now you should be able to access the tool. This time, instead of entering the direct link, I'm going to show you how to get there via the navigation menus. So the first thing that you'll want to do is come up here to the Performance Measures tab and click on that. And then if you come down, the second from the bottom one here, you'll see it's the Next Steps tool for LIHEAP targeting, an interactive tool for examining performance measures data. So that's what we want, so you'll just click on that. And this brings us to what's called the landing page, and you'll see now that link that was preventing me from going forward is now gone, and now I have access to the next button. So finally, before I hand it over to Lisa and Jane to provide a live demonstration, I just want to give you a couple notes about navigating within the tool. So the first thing is that this tool is designed to be very easy to use. It is set up as a step-by-step walkthrough with instructions and guided analysis provided at each step of the process. And additionally, everything in the tool is designed to be point and click, and there's little to no data input required from the user at all. And so to advance from one screen to another, you simply use these next and previous buttons that you'll find within the tool. But it's really important to note here that you should only be using the next and previous buttons within the tool. If you try to come up here and use your standard forward and back buttons on your data browser, you'll actually be bumped out of where you were at in the tool and kind of lose your spot and have to start over from the beginning. So that can be kind of frustrating. And another note of caution is that, like we see right here, you might find some links within the tool. And depending on how your web browser is set up, these may open as a fresh tab or in a fresh window, but they might also overwrite the window that you currently have open. And if it does end up kind of overwriting the current window you have open, then pushing the back button isn't going to take you back to where you were at. It'll take you back to the start of the tool. So just as a general best practice within this tool, we recommend right-clicking on links that you want to open and opening them in a new tab so that you don't lose your spot within the tool. And then the last thing that I wanted to say is that Apprise and the PMI team are actively working with our fantastic programmer, Mark Reichard at iData Technologies, to make improvements to this tool in terms of navigation and content. And feedback and ideas from grantees are welcome and can be submitted via the help tab that I showed you earlier. But you can also, again, email us directly. Those email addresses and contact information will be provided, like I said, on one of the last slides. But now I'll hand it over to Lisa and Jane for our live demonstration.
Great, thanks, Connor. Hi, everybody. I am Lisa Gobin. For those of you who don't know me, I am the Senior Program Compliance and Policy Officer for the energy programs here in the beautiful state of Oregon, and also a member of the Performance Management Implementation Work Group. For this portion of the webinar, Jane and I will be walking you through a live demonstration of how to navigate using the Next Steps tool. As Jane and I speak, Connor will continue to share his screen and follow along with us on the LIHEAP Performance Management website rather than going back to the slides. However, as he mentioned earlier, the slides that are available for download via the Handouts tab in GoToWebinar do include screenshots that show each of the steps we're going to work through. So if you'd like to go back and look at this process in written format, that is available for you to do so. Okay, picking up where Connor left off. After logging in and accessing the landing page, the tool starts off by providing a brief refresher on the LIHEAP performance measures. The introduction page itself gives a brief description of what the tool does. Connor's going to click next. The next screen provides an overview of LIHEAP performance measures and related key definitions. For example, it reminds us that the federal LIHEAP statute requires grantees to target the highest benefits to households with the lowest incomes and the highest energy burdens, and that OCS developed two performance measures indicators, the Benefit Targeting Index and the Benefit Reduction Targeting Index, both of which help to assure compliance with that statute. It also provides important definitions for household energy burden, all LIHEAP assisted households, and high burden LIHEAP assisted households. The next screen provides an explanation of the Benefit Targeting Index, which, as you can see here, is a measure of whether or not a grantee is, on average, providing larger benefits to higher burden households compared to all LIHEAP assisted households. It also provides some information on how to calculate and interpret this index value. And finally, the last screen here in this intro series provides an explanation of the Burden Reduction Targeting Index, which is a measure of whether or not a grantee is, on average, paying a greater portion of the energy bill for high burden households than for all LIHEAP assisted households. And as a reminder, there's more information available about how to calculate and interpret this index value. Users who already feel comfortable with the LIHEAP performance measures can skip through these review screens by repetitively clicking next. On the flip side, those who want to learn more can take as much time as they need to read through the available information. Now I'm going to ask Connor to just go ahead and click next. Okay, after the brief refresher, users are asked to select a path. First, you'll be asked to select the state to analyze. You'll notice that for convenience, the tool auto-populate the state the user is associated with, but you can select any state that you would like. For example, Connor lives in New Jersey, so his dropdown is set to New Jersey by default, but he can select any of the 50 states or DC if he would like to. And for this demonstration, we're going to focus on my state of Oregon. After selecting the state, grantees can opt to explore their benefit targeting or their benefit reduction targeting index score. For this demonstration, though, we want to look more closely at our benefit targeting index. So we'll select this option on the screen and click next. Okay, after choosing a path, the next screen displays the most recently available score for that grantee and targeting index that was selected. For example, we can see here that in federal fiscal year 2019, Oregon's benefit targeting index was 122. The tool also explains what that means. It means that in 2019, high burden households in Oregon received a LIHEAP benefit that was, on average, 22% larger than the benefit awarded to the average LIHEAP household. Right now, federal fiscal year 2019 is the most current year available in the tool because that is the most recent data available in the LIHEAP data warehouse. That being said, Apprise staff are working to get FY20 data into the warehouse and expect to have that data available hopefully in early November. As soon as the data warehouse is updated, the tool will be able to show us the more recent index scores for each grantee. Anyways, let's continue on. Connor, please go ahead and click next. This screen displays the number and percentage of LIHEAP assisted households for which the state selected collected performance data. Here, the tool tells us that in 2019, Oregon collected performance data for 60% of LIHEAP assisted households. This provides important context regarding how representative Oregon's index scores are of all the households that we served. If the percentage was very low, we may be more cautious about using this data to make program decisions. We'd also probably focus our efforts on increasing the amount of data that we collect from households to bump that percentage up a bit. I'm going to ask Connor to click next. Okay, this screen displays the grantee's benefit targeting index over time. Here we can see that Oregon's benefit targeting index score has stayed relatively the same over the period between 2016 and 2019. This is important because over the last few years, our state has made changes to our benefit matrix, and this data does demonstrate that those changes have not adversely impacted our goal of targeting higher benefits to higher burden households. But before we move forward, I think it's important to underscore something Melissa mentioned earlier. The primary point of LIHEAP performance measures is to give grantees the data they need to evaluate their program, including any changes they made to their program. By looking at our data over time, we can see the effects of our changes and determine whether we are achieving what we actually set out to do or not. Connor, go ahead and click next, please. This screen displays the average benefit targeting index score for all states across the US, which, as you can see, was 121 in 2019. Once again, we're also told what this means, that in 2019, high burden households across all states received a benefit that was on average 21% larger than the benefit received by the average LIHEAP household. Next slide, please. This screen compares the grantee's benefit targeting index with the average for all states that we saw in the previous screen. In this particular case, we see that in 2019, Oregon's benefit targeting index was about the same as average for all states that year. Here again, I want to underscore something else Melissa said. The average for all states should not be considered a benchmark, nor is it necessarily good or bad. The purpose of providing this average is simply to provide context for each grantee as they analyze their own index scores. Next slide, please. We're going to go ahead and move on to the final fixed comparison. This screen here displays the index score for each individual state in the grantee's region, as well as the average among those scores. As we can see, the average benefit targeting index for all grantees in my region, which is Region 10, was 130 in 2019. So at 122, Oregon's benefit targeting index score was slightly lower than the average for our region. If I were walking through this tool for the first time, something I would probably note here is that the state with the highest benefit targeting index in Region 10 was Washington at 145. Hey, Washington. And based on this data, I may decide to reach out to Brian up there in Washington and learn more about his benefit matrix or other best practices that they have in Washington in terms of benefit targeting. So that is a potential next step for me here. Anyway, this is the last default comparison included for this index. At this point, users have two options. One, we can go back to explore the index we didn't choose at the start by clicking Review Other Index button at the bottom of the screen, shown here. Or we can click the Next button to move forward to the Customer Comparison Builder for the current index. But for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to hand things over to the wonderful Jane Blank to show us how the Custom Comparison Builder works. So take it away, Jane.
Thanks, Lisa. Wonderful, Jane Blank, huh? Thanks, Lisa. Hi, everyone. My name is Jane Blank. I'm the Section Chief of the Energy Assistance Program here in Wisconsin. And I'll be giving a demonstration, as Lisa mentioned, of the Custom Comparison Builder within the Next Steps tool. So this feature appears directly following the regional comparison screen and allows users to build their own customized comparison of the index scores of other states. The top portion of the screen allows you to set filters based on index value or geographic location to control the states that will be included in your comparison report. For example, on the left, you can filter to states that have an index that's greater than, less than, equal to, or between a particular value or values of your choosing. On the right, you can use the Select Region menu to filter geographically so that all states in a particular OCS region show up in the results. Or you can use the Select States menu to handpick the individual states you would like to be included in your results. Finally, you can mix and match selections from both the right and the left-hand side to narrow your results even further. Moving down, the bottom portion of the screen allows users to select additional information they'd like returned with the benefit index scores of the states that meet the filter criteria from above. You can see here that we have information available in the following categories: general information, targeting, program components, program administration, and eligibility. But rather than just talking about it, let's walk through a couple of examples so that everyone can get a real sense of how this works. So first, let's say that Oregon is interested in looking beyond their own OCS region, and now they want to see the benefit targeting scores for other nearby states. Since we are interested in seeing all other scores, we would select all in the index values menu on the left. On the right, the region selection box will automatically default to the region associated with the user's login. However, in this case, we're conducting a search on behalf of Oregon, and they would probably be interested in looking at the region directly to their east. So we'll change that selection to Region 8, Denver. For now, we just want to see targeting index scores and nothing else for the grantees in Region 8, so we'll leave the bottom portion of the search blank and click Next at the bottom of the screen. What we get back is called a custom comparison report. These reports have two parts. On the top half of the screen, we see a table showing the information we asked for. On the bottom half of the screen, we see a bar chart providing a visual comparison similar to what we've seen on other screens in this tool. For this particular example, we can see that the comparison report we received back includes the benefit targeting index scores for all grantees in Region 8, just like we asked. During Lisa's demonstration, we saw that the average index score for all states in Region 10, Lisa's region, was 130. But we can see from these comparison results that several states in Region 8, which is Denver region, have scores higher than 130. Based on these results, Lisa and her colleagues in Oregon may wish to learn more about LIHEAP programs in Region 8. And one way to do that is to look at the grantee profiles for these states, which we can also access directly from this tool by modifying our report. So let's click Previous on the bottom of the screen to return to the comparison criteria page. Now, once we've done that, you'll notice that the comparison criteria we previously entered, all scores and Region 8 Denver are all still in place, so we'll leave those be. But we can go to the bottom section and click Grantee Profiles before clicking Next. Now click Next. Now, in addition to the benefit targeting scores, there's also a link to the grantee profile for each state. Clicking that link for a particular grantee will generate a one-page program fact sheet for that state. So Connor selected Montana. Grantees can use these profiles to identify major similarities and differences between their own LIHEAP program and the LIHEAP program in the other state. This includes funding levels, number of households served, or the types of assistance offered. Comparing program similarities and differences may help grantees pinpoint other states they'd like to talk with to learn more about their targeting efforts. Okay, let's run through one more example. We'll start by clicking the New Comparison button at the bottom of the screen. Okay, this time, let's say we want to find all states with a benefit targeting index greater than 135. First, we click the greater than button under the filter options and then enter 135. Second, we'll clear the region selection box by clicking Select Region at the top of the list. Then we'll want to select all 50 states plus DC under Select States. You can do this by selecting multiple states by holding down the Control button on your keyboard while you click the states you want to include. In this case, however, it's probably faster for Connor to just start at Alabama and then click and drag to select all states in the list. Finally, we also want to get an idea of what the benefit levels look like in states with index scores that are above 135. So we'll go to the bottom half of this screen and select benefit levels under the targeting subheader and then click Next. Okay, the comparison returns 11 states that have a benefit targeting index over 135. The results also display the minimum heating benefit, maximum heating benefit, and maximum crisis benefit available to households in each of the returned states, as well as any comments that the grantee chose to provide in their state plan about their benefit levels. These benefit levels can provide valuable context for understanding targeting index scores. For example, the results show that most states with high benefit targeting index scores aren't afraid to have a significant difference between their minimum and maximum heating benefits. Comparing benefit levels against their own benefit matrices may also help grantees identify states they'd like to learn more about. That's part of the reason why this tool is called the Next Steps tool, because it can help grantees identify what their next steps might be in order to go about improving their LIHEAP targeting practices. And in some cases, that next step is reaching out to other grantees for ideas and feedback. In this particular case, Lisa might decide that her next step is to contact one of these states with an index value over 135. But how should she go about doing that? As it turns out, we can also get that information directly from the custom comparison feature. To do that, we'll first click Previous to go back to the selection screen. Then once again, the comparison criteria they already had in there is there, so we'll leave that be. However, this time we'll want to go to the bottom of the screen and then click Contact Information, and then click Next. So similar to before, the comparison returns all the same previous information, but it also adds the contact information for each grantee. This information can be used to reach out to peers to learn more about elements of their program or specific targeting efforts. Finally, the last thing I want to go over with you before I hand things off is that you can print or download the results from these custom comparisons in case you want to share them or return to them later. So as you can see at the bottom of the page where Connor just scrolled, all of the comparison results are downloadable as a CSV file using the Download as CSV button. You can also use the Print button to send your results directly to the printer, or you could save them as a PDF format. After you're done looking at or saving your results, you can also go back and explore your other targeting index, which Lisa mentioned in the beginning. It's the other one is the burden reduction targeting index, or start a new custom comparison by using the associated buttons at the bottom of the screen. All right, that's it for Lisa's and my demonstration. I'll now hand it over to Marisa so she can walk us through future plans for this tool.
Thanks, Jane. All right, well, hello everyone. My name is Marisa Larson, and I'm the manager of the LIHEAP Clearinghouse here at the National Center for Appropriate Technology, otherwise known as NCAT. I'm going to round out the presentation portion of today's webinar by talking about the future of the Next Steps tool, as well as additional resources of this nature that are available for grantees on the LIHEAP Performance Management website. Next slide, please. All right, to summarize what we've covered so far today, the Next Steps tool for LIHEAP targeting is designed to assist grantees with interpreting their most recently available benefit targeting and burden reduction targeting index values, comparing changes in their own index values over time, comparing their index values with the average for all states, comparing their index values with other grantees in their region, identifying states with high index values that they'd like to learn more about, and exploring characteristics of grantees with high targeting index values. Next slide, please. Over the next 6 months, the PMI team will be working to further develop phase 2 of this tool. This will include adding features to help grantees identify the reasons their targeting indices are higher or lower than expected. For example, we plan to add the ability to compare your index values among the different main heating fuel types used by your recipient households. We also plan to add in features that will help grantees develop a customized plan for improving benefit and burden reduction targeting based on proven strategies and techniques. Next slide. Our team would also like to take this opportunity to encourage grantees to look into and use some of our other resources developed by our colleagues on the PMI-WG. The links we have included on this slide lead to tools that will help grantees accurately collect and report performance data, assure their data is accurate, reliable, and actionable, and use performance data to evaluate and improve their programs. Okay, next slide. Finally, grantees are encouraged to contact Apprise with any questions about the Next Steps tool we walked through today or anything related to LIHEAP reporting, data, or performance management. The primary points of contact for that are Dan Bausch, Connor Priest, and Melissa Torgerson, and all of their contact information is listed here on this slide. I'll now turn the time back over to Connor for one last poll before we open the floor for questions.
Hi, Marisa. Thank you. Right before I move into that last poll, I just want to point out one more thing on this slide here, which is this announcements box. We've confirmed the dates for the 2 webinars that Apprise puts on annually with instructions and help for completing the household report long form. And so the first one for this year will be held on November 4th from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time. That's the What's New for FY 2021 reporting webinar for the household report. And in that one, we'll be going over what's new in the household report for the 2021 form. And you can register for that at the link that we've provided on the screen here. The second webinar will be held on November 30th from 3 to 4:30 Eastern Time. And in that one, we'll be taking a little bit of a deeper dive to go over everything that needs to be entered in the fiscal year 2021 household report long form line by line. And a key component of both of those obviously is going to be talking about modifications and special points of interest with regards to your CARES Act and ARPA supplemental funding. And the registration link for that second webinar will be sent out via email shortly as well. But okay, let's move on to that last poll. And let me get it started here. The question is, will you visit and try out the Next Steps tool in the near future? And your response options are, yes, this is awesome. I really want to, but I just need to find the time. Or I don't really see us looking at this tool in the near future. I'll just wait a couple more seconds here to let any lingering folks submit their responses. Okay. All right, so it looks like the vast majority of you are saying, yes, this is great, and that you want to look at it soon. And about 30% of you are saying you really want to look at this, but you're a little busy right now and you'll be looking for time to make that happen. So that's great. We're really glad that you all are indicating that this seems like a useful tool to you. And like we said, we're going to be implementing phase 2 and constantly making improvements. So if you have any suggestions or recommendations for that or questions, you can contact us. But now we'll go ahead and move on to questions. So if anyone has questions, like we said, you can submit those via the question and answer box in the client there, or if anyone wants to raise their hand and request to be unmuted so you can ask your question live, that would be fine as well. Okay, so I'm seeing one question here. I've noticed that my scores went down in fiscal year 2020 compared to the past. I think that this is related to CARES benefits we gave out at the end of the year, which we used to give supplemental benefits to everyone. Does that make sense? And Dan, do you want me to answer that, or did you want to?
Hi, this is Dan. Yeah, I can speak to that. Yeah, one thing that is a little bit different with your FY20 data and your FY21 data will be the impact that the CARES supplemental funds had and the ARPA supplemental funds had, depending on how you use those funds. So it's possible your scores may look different than in prior years. In that case, if you use them for a supplemental benefit where you gave all households the same benefit amount, you might see the scores change in that way because those extra funds weren't targeted to households in a specific way based on their burden or their income level, for example. So that's something that may happen and something that we can help you to try to understand if you're seeing that and not understanding why.
Great, thanks, Dan. I see another question here that says, I think the breakdown by fuel type will be very helpful. Is that coming soon? And I think what this person is referring to is something that Marisa said on one of the next steps for the next steps tool slides. She noted that one thing that we're going to be trying to implement in phase 2 is showing your breakdown by fuel type. And yes, we are working on adding that functionality, and we hope that that can be up within a few months, but that may also be a little bit longer. We may kind of lump that in with a greater release of the phase 2 portion of the tool. Okay, I see another question here. How can this tool help identify and increase LIHEAP participation among eligible households? And Melissa or any panelists, do you guys want to take that one?
Can you repeat the question one more time? I want to be sure I understand it.
Yep, it's how can this tool help identify and increase LIHEAP participation among eligible households?
I think that this tool, as it is right now, really focuses on your targeting index scores, so how you're targeting benefits. But what we know that is that if you look at your report data, which we think of your performance data as all of the data you submit for your different reports, including things like your household report, which share characteristics of the households that you're serving. And so one way we've seen grantees use that data is to look at the folks who applied last year and compare them to the folks who applied this year. Or even just over multiple years, you'll find a case study on the performance management website page that looks, for example, at the decline in housing applications among families with young children. So being able to look at your data to find out who's not applying and target your outreach in that kind of way is a really useful way to use this data.
Great, thanks, Melissa. Another question that I'm seeing here is someone asked, is this something that only I can use as the coordinator for my program, or can my staff use this also? And the answer to that is that yes, your staff can request an account if they don't already have one. And I showed how to do that earlier during my portion of the presentation. You go to click the login button, and then there's a create new account button, so you can submit your request that way.
Connor, one other thing about adding the feature soon about looking at your scores and your results for different fuel types is that the data that's used in this tool is also available in the data warehouse. This tool helps you put it all together and gives you context and how to use the data and where to look next and how to find other states based on the characteristics you're interested in. But you can go into the LIHEAP data warehouse and find information for a specific fuel type. So if you're thinking about how to handle your propane benefits, for example, if you have propane in your state, you can go look at that information in the data warehouse. And if you have questions on how to find that or use that, you can reach out to us at Apprise.
I also think that some of you don't even know what questions to ask, right? So you know that you want to do something, you see weird things in your data, but you can't even put your finger on how to talk about it or ask the right question. And that is completely normal and okay. And that's why we put our contact information at the end of this webinar. We really encourage you to just give us a call and say, I don't even know what to ask you. I just know that there's something here I want to change, or there's something here that doesn't seem right. And we can help you figure out those questions and answers.
All right, great. I'm not seeing any other questions or hands raised at this time. So Melissa or Dan, unless you guys have, or any other panelists, unless you guys have any other announcements or points you want to make, I think we can go ahead and end a few minutes early.
Just thanks to the work group members, Iris, Marisa, Jane, and Lisa, who presented today, and for to all of you who attended. I know your schedules are busy and we appreciate your time.
All right, thanks everyone. Thank you to all the speakers. And again, this presentation will be made available on the ACF YouTube channel. So thanks so much and have a great rest of your day.